Part 94. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 934. Sure enough, the dark existence that appeared had long mouthparts, sharp front legs, and a pair of wings with veins. If it wasn't Jiayan, who was it? But he is still him, and this 251-star district is still 251-star district, but the only thing is that Jiayan's strength is completely different now. When he left, Jiayan couldn't even defeat a half-star powerhouse, but now that he's back, his strength has risen to the point where he can crush a half-star genius in the 251st sector to death, just like chopping vegetables and slicing melons. He. An Urshan force existed, and for a moment he almost thought he had seen a ghost. He is still just a venerable, and his brainwave power has only changed from the mid-venerable stage when he left to the late venerable stage. How could he become so terrifying? Another half-star genius was a little crazy. His blow just now killed Luo Banru, who was about the same strength as me. I couldn't even see the speed of his strike. If it were me, it would definitely be a one-hit kill. The Urshan forces were all extremely shocked and in disbelief at the Jiayan who had just appeared. Jiayan glanced back at Bai Huangfu, who was seriously injured, and Wu Xi's power star. Fortunately, the loss is not unacceptable. Jiayan took a long breath. It turned out that the request for help signal he had received before was indeed sent by Wu Xi's forces. After searching the starry sky, the Etisha actually detected signs of fighting here. Jiayan, who was anxious, crossed over first. Enter the space and come to this battle place. Then Jiayan arrived urgently and rescued Bai Wangfu. Is that Jiayan? Jiayan is back. We are saved. Within Wu Xi's power star, most of the powerful people in the second level of Urshan power were not aware of the movements in the outside world, but continued to kill. However, some of the Wu Xi power lords noticed the scenery in the starry sky. Jiayan is back. What's the use? He's just a venerable person, and coming back is just one more person to die. I think so. His strength has been verified last time. At most, it is similar to Bai Wangfu's strength. It is not helpful at all here. And don't forget, who is the one who caused the result of our Wu Xi power? It's Jiayan. One after another, some of the sages, some of whom were not very friendly to Jiayan, still expressed their disapproval of Jiayan's appearance. A venerable man was about to die under the attack of a powerful person from the second level. But when this venerable man shouted loudly, he thought he was about to die. A faintly appearing monster shadow quietly appeared in Wu Xi's power star, crossing the attacking second-level strongman. Puff! Puff puff! This monster was so fast that it was like an afterimage sweeping past the monsters. When the Wu Xi Force monsters looked around, they were horrified to see that the Wu Xi Force venerables who were in danger actually came back to life, while the powerful monsters from the second level who attacked them died one by one. The body was cut into two pieces by some sharp weapon. After the afterimage monster passed through these monsters, it paused for half a second. Jiayan. Each of the venerable monsters is considered a venerable after all, and their strength and vision are guaranteed. The monster paused for half a second, and they were able to clearly see each other's faces. Okay, you don't have to run away. I will deal with these powerful people in Urshan right away. Jiayan faintly glanced at the presence of the venerable on this level of the astral body, and then disappeared again. Everything happened in half a second. Everyone was strong. Although their strength varied, they could still carry out a series of conversations in half a second. Within a few seconds, Jiayan actually flew across the entire star in a series. If the brainwave power could be solved, he would use the brainwave power to solve it. If the brainwave power could not be solved, he would descend on the body and kill the opponent. When he reappeared, he came to Bai Wangfu's side. But within the Wu Xi power planet, which had been filled with loud sounds of killing and bloodshed, there was no longer any fluctuation of the powerful Urshan power. They are all dead. Jia Yan, you are back. Thank you for saving my life. Bai Huangfu formally met Jia Yan for the first time, and then came to his side with a weak breath of life. Jia Yan let out a long sigh, remembering that when he first came to the genius battlefield, he thought that Bai Huangfu was a being that he could not compete with, but now in his eyes, he was no longer so majestic. Don't worry about your injury. I have some things here that are good for your injury. Jia Yan looked at the area not far away and saw the fighting around him suddenly changed, and the creatures of the Urshan forces began to escape, and then their bodies faintly disappeared into the space. Looking at the place where Jia Yan still seemed to have an afterimage, Bai Huangfu also had a thought similar to Jia Yan's. The little giant mosquito that was not strong at the beginning has now far surpassed him. He could clearly see Jia Yan tearing apart space before, but now that Jia Yan has disappeared, he doesn't know which direction he is going. Of course, the direction Jia Yan went in was very simple, it must be where the escaping creatures from the Urshan forces were. Run away. This Jia Yan's strength has greatly increased. I think even King Urshan is no match for him. In the starry sky, a half-star genius with Urshan power kept looking back behind him. The fear in his expression could not be erased. To them, Jia Yan's strength was originally just a small figure that was a bit of a threat, but no one dared to imagine that Jia Yan said he would fight King Urshan in half a year, but in less than half a year, he became a far more than the monster they imagined. After I go back, I will report the news about Jia Yan, and then regardless of whether King Urshan and the others can escape, I will escape myself. This Jia Yan's strength is simply not something that our Urshan forces can deal with now. Maybe I can escape to where is the Erlong force? After all, the Erlong force is the headquarters of our Urshan force. This semi-star genius is still thinking about his retreat. He didn't know that even if he fled to the Erlong force, the creatures of the Erlong force who didn't dare to offend Jia Yan would probably kill him to please Jia Yan. Of course, if he could escape in front of Jia Yan, the Erlong forces would not send him to this backward 251-star sector. Want to escape? With your strength, it's impossible. The strong man just heard this faint voice coming from beside him, and then he felt a shock all over. He saw his side spinning continuously in space, and he also saw a headless monster corpse right in his sight, feebly slowing down while escaping at high speed. The corpse seems familiar, as if it is his own. When the monster reacted to this, the last thoughts of his life were completely over. Bai Huangfu stood quietly in the starry sky, looking at the battle situation not far away. No matter how the Urshan attackers escaped, Jia Yan could always chase them after they escaped a certain distance, and then kill them. Urshan forces, you can't believe it? Jia Yan has really achieved such strength, haha. Baiario chuckled softly, and then he groaned slightly in pain as it really involved the injury. Jia Yan didn't let him wait any longer, and returned to him after dozens of seconds. The space was distorted, and Jia Yan was completely intact. Even in Bai Huangfu's view, he had been chasing these Urshan power monsters for a long time without even using his true strength. Senior Baiario, let's return to the star body and I will heal your injuries. Jia Yan took Bai Huangfu back to the Wuxi power planet. Although the star body was riddled with holes, and even most of the life functions were damaged, the geniuses on the star body did not suffer much loss because of Jia Yan's timely appearance. Welcome to Lord Jia Yan, Lord Bai Huangfu has returned victoriously. Just when Jia Yan and Bai Huangfu entered the star, they heard a neat sound of monsters. Jia Yan and Bai Huangfu, who had long known what was going on here through the power of brainwaves, didn't have much change in their demeanor, they just nodded. It turned out that a group of powerful people and venerables from Wuxi's power had lined up before Jia Yan and his two men returned, and then greeted them respectfully. You must know that Jia Yan is already an unimaginably powerful monster to them. If they didn't greet him like this, they wouldn't know what expressions they should use to face Jia Yan. Those venerable monsters who had insulted and doubted Jia Yan now lowered their heads with great respect, fearing that Jia Yan would directly take their lives because of their remarks. You guys repair the star body, go to Shuyuan and I'll help Senior Bai Wangfu heal his injuries. Jia Yan said lightly to the monsters of Wu Xi's power, and then returned to Bai Wangfu's residence in the center of the star with Bai Wangfu. Both of them were a little disappointed with the performance of Wu Xi's forces, and it showed in their expressions at this time. What you gave me was actually an intermediate repair cream. Isn't this something that can only be given out in certain large-scale genius battles? Could it be? When Jia Yan handed Bai Wangfu certain medical items, Bai Wangfu's eyes nearly popped out. You must know that although most of the rewards Jia Yan received in the 132-star sector are of little use to himself, they are equivalent to elixirs for ordinary half-star level beings. This is too valuable. There are some that I can't even name. I don't know how you got them, but you must have gone through a lot of hardships. I can't accept them. Senior Bai Wangfu, you were so helpful to me when I first came to Genius Battlefield. Now these little things are just my thoughts. What's more, Wu Xi's forces and you are like this because of my relationship. If you don't accept it, I will have a bad conscience. After hearing what Jia Yan said, Bai Wangfu reluctantly accepted Jia Yan's kindness. Among the materials Jia Yan gave him, there were also some strength-enhancing materials that he could not use himself. You must know that these are rewards for the genius battle of Erlong forces. It is impossible for a being like Bai Wangfu to get them. Presumably, these are the rewards. It is also a great improvement to his strength. Of course Jia Yan would not say it outright. Jia Yan, what do you want to do next? After some hesitation, Bai Wangfu accepted Jia Yan's kindness, but asked in a different direction. Of course, go directly to the headquarters of the Urshan forces, Jia Yanfu said directly with a faint light in his eyes. Thanks to book friend Fat YT for the 500 starting coin reward, thank you, Reborn as an Interstellar Giant Mosquito author, Bulletin U. Chapter 935. Urshan Power, Erlong King, has been in a bad mood these days. He thought about the time when he received the order from the Erlong forces and came to the 251st sector to carry out the expansion mission. Sigh, I don't know what happened to the people I sent to the Erlong forces to ask for help. King Urshan stood on the tallest building of the Urshan celestial body, looking at the distant scene of the starry sky. King Urshan was extremely nervous about Jia Yan. Precisely because he himself saw Jia Yan's potential, even though he was now slowly moving towards the enemy, it did not prevent him from recognizing Jia Yan's potential. Jia Yan promised to fight, so he was certain. Now King Urshan doesn't know where he has gone. He only knows that if Jia Yan returns, there may be some crisis in Urshan forces. But no matter how powerful Jia Yan becomes, it is not worth mentioning in front of the strong men of the Erlong force. After all, the powerful beings of the Erlong force are like gods to our 251 semi-stellar geniuses. The presence. As a creature who has been in the Erlong force, King Urshan understands the terror of Erlong force. Although he was named King Urshan and received the title of king, this was because he was appeased and became the real king. Any one of them could easily take his life. As long as there is a king, Urshan's power crisis can be easily overcome. I sent a wave of strong men to stop Wu Xi's forces before, but I don't know what happened now. King Urshan felt that he had too many things to worry about, which made him a little uneasy. I don't think so much anymore, and everything I did was just a precaution. Maybe Jia Yan didn't grow to the level I did in 1 year. Thinking about it, King Ertian also nodded mockingly. Even if he is a high-level genius, he cannot imagine that the other party can grow from a mid-level venerable to a level that can threaten him, a semi-star level powerhouse, in 1 year. At least King Urshan has never heard of similar legends. That's all, I'm just bothering myself now. I don't think about it anymore. I think about it so much. No wonder I can't become stronger. King Urshan smiled faintly, and then prepared to return to his room. But at this moment, a violent alarm sounded throughout the entire natural planet. Toot toot. The shrill alarms made King Urshan look shocked as he was about to turn around. What's going on? Who sounded the alarm? A bad premonition flashed through King Urshan's heart, and he quickly took out his communicator and asked the testing department. Sir, the inspection station just ahead discovered, a battleship from Wuxi's forces was discovered. A frightened voice came from the other side of the communicator. Wuxi's force? Wuxi's force has not been destroyed yet. King Urshan was startled, and then he felt incredible that the team of strong men he sent, although he did not participate in it, already constituted most of the combat power of Urshan's forces. There are only 5 or 6 half-stars in the team, and there is only one Wuxi who can resist it than Huangfu. There must be some change. What kind of change is it? King Urshan was slightly frightened in his heart, and then he thought about it with excitement. It was probably Wolfstar who took action, but this would not cause the entire Urshan force team to be wiped out. That's right, they just returned late. King Urshan thought of the most reasonable reason, and then he felt slightly calm. As long as he understands the reason, there is still room for change, and if Wolfstar takes action, he is not afraid, because there is no one stronger in strength between the two parties, and even King Er is very confident that he can deal with Wolfstar. Okay, don't be surprised. Ask the other party why they are here. King Er Tian made such a sound to the monitoring station in the frontier area, and then opened several communications. He is inviting several major forces that are familiar with Urshan forces. If Wolfstar appears, it will definitely not be just his own family, because he doesn't dare. The Urshan force is the most powerful force in the entire 251 sector. Although it seems like a joke to outsiders, the strongest is the strongest. Without the intervention of external forces, no local force can threaten Urshan's power. After doing all this, King Urshan felt a little calmer. Having worked hard in the 251 sector for decades or hundreds of years, he has experienced many major events, and has established such a powerful force single-handedly. Of course, there will not be too many disturbances just because of this crisis. But today when he was calm, there was always some palpitation in his heart that he didn't know where it came from. Just 10 minutes later, a channel that had been transmitted before came through again urgently. Sir, we can't stop, This communication channel suddenly stopped. What's wrong? Come back, who did you meet? King Urshan's heart tightened, and he quickly sent out a question, but the other party could no longer accept it. Damn it, what happened? The incoming force of Wuxi prevented the complete communication of our Urshan force monitoring station from being transmitted. Even Wolfstar is unlikely to be able to do it. King Urshan finally couldn't sit still any longer. He flew up in person and came to the periphery of the star, looking towards the distant starry sky. The starry sky monitoring station was 2 million kilometers away, so it was naturally impossible to see it from here, but he at least expressed a feeling of anxiety. The entire Urshan forces were completely mobilized under the command of King Urshan. Hurry up, our opponent this time may be Wolfstar. Now is the time to teach him, the fool who claims to be the best in the sector, a lesson, so that Wolfstar will not always think that he can surpass our Urshan power. A powerful man with a high rank urgently ordered his subordinates to carry out defensive work. The battle of forces in the genius battlefield also has a bottom line for the genius battlefield. As long as too many geniuses are not killed, the genius battlefield will not care about it. But if too many geniuses are killed, the genius battlefield will step in. But this condition is not absolute. Even if some forces are destroyed, the genius battlefield official will not appear. In short, when external forces come, there is nothing wrong with the defensive forces carrying out the most rigorous defense. At least the Urshan forces did a good job. Under King Urshan's order, the entire force was kept secret. It can be seen that there is a reason why the Urshan forces became the strongest in the 251-star district in a short period of time. Just less than half an hour later, a small group of battleships slowly arrived from the starry sky outside the realm of Urshan's powerful planet. Huh? How can there be only so many battleships? Just when this small group of battleships arrived, all the creatures in Urshan's forces were startled, and then they all seemed a little stunned. This surprise was not because the opponent was too powerful, but the opposite. The opponent's invaders' fleet is too weak. The entire fleet only has 5 ships, and they seem to be in tatters. Some of them are still smoking. Even 3 of the 5 ships are small battleships, that is, single-person battleships. Such single-person battleships are the only ones in the Urshan force. No less than a few hundred ships. This kind of fleet dares to come to Urshan to cause trouble. Most of the nervous geniuses in the Urshan forces who were waiting for him wanted to burst into laughter. But there was only one being who did not laugh. That is King Er. He looked at the approaching fleet in the starry sky. The reason why he didn't smile was simple. It was because it was impossible for such a crude fleet to break through the front defense network of Urshan forces. Since the fleet is not strong enough, it can only mean that there is a terrifying strong man in the opponent's fleet. He stared coldly at the fleet above, and then his pupils shrank. He saw the largest warship in that small fleet, and it looked familiar. That's not Jia Yan's so-called exclusive aircraft. It seems to be called the Edisha, he said in surprise, and then his heart was shocked. The Edissa appears here, what about Jia Yan? Just when he was in shock and doubt, sure enough, the hatch of the Edissa opened. A dark-skinned monster flew out of the hatch and stood proudly in the sky 200 kilometers away from Urshan's planet. He has a slender mouthparts and a shiny dark exoskeleton. The most peculiar thing is his piercing compound eyes. Countless small eyes provide this monster with excellent vision. This monster has an awe-inspiring aura. Even if anyone sees him, they can tell that his strength is just that of a venerable, but they still dare not underestimate it. King Urshan, come out. I'm here to fight with you repeatedly and resolve the past grievances between your Urshan forces and my Wusai forces. This monster made a sound that was familiar to all living beings in the Urshan forces. Jia Yan. A monster in Urshan's power looked at the screen in surprise. He is actually Jia Yan. The same goes for other monsters, which are amazing. Regarding the battle between Jia Yan and King Urshan, the entire Urshan force has spread, and even the story between the two parties can be compiled into a set of books. So now that I saw Jia Yan and heard what he said about fighting, all the monsters immediately looked at the tallest building in the star where King Urshan was. In that building, King Urshan had a glimmer of light in his eyes. On his human-like head, several vellus hairs stood up. This was the biological sensing organ of King Urshan. When this organ rose, it meant that he had encountered someone. A very difficult opponent. Jia Yan. He muttered something in his mouth, and then King Urshan opened the door of the building and flew out lightly. The person in the sky was indeed Jia Yan. Today, he returns to his hometown again. But when today comes, the feeling is completely different from the last time I came to participate in the Urshan Power Genius battle. Before, I had a sense of fear to benefit from this prosperous planet, but when I came here today, I no longer felt how prosperous this planet was, because compared to the forces in the 132-star district, the Urshan force was just a rural force. Just as Jia Yan was thinking about all this indifferently, a huge monster soared into the sky from below the star and came to him. Your heavenly king. Please subscribe to the official version. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 936. On top of the huge star, there are many space battleships that look like science fiction, surrounded by small forts, which are also densely populated in the starry sky like locusts. The flames of war are raging outside the star, almost imminent. At the center of the artillery fire and the battleship, there were two monsters, one large and one small, looking at each other. This is the most powerful person among the Jiayan and Naertian forces, and the one sent by the Erlong forces to open up wasteland in the 251 star areas, King Urshan. King Urshan's brainwave power, which belongs to that of a semi-star level powerhouse, was slightly agitated. He looked at the venerable monster in front of him, although it was several times smaller than himself, and sighed in his heart. Finally, the monster he was optimistic about had reached this point, and just by feeling, he understood that even though he had a high opinion of Jiayan, he still missed it. Jiayan, you are still a venerable, but I feel an aura from you that threatens me. At least I was not wrong in thinking that you are a high-level genius. King Urshan looked at Jiayan and said with some emotion. King Urshan, I will not thank you. Jiayan shook his head and said lightly. The other party was optimistic about him, but he brought about a disaster that almost destroyed Wu Xi's power. How could Jiayan thank him? Moreover, Jiayan did not get any benefit from this optimism. The only benefit was that it put some pressure on himself. After venturing to the 132-star sector, his improvement speed was much faster than before. I understand, you came here today to fulfill your promise to me, right? King Urshan said without any surprise when he saw that Jiayan did not thank him. In addition to this, there is also the matter of your Urshan forces trying to destroy my Wu Xi forces. We should also deal with it properly. Don't you think we should? Jia Yanfu's eyes flashed with a stern look. Our Urshan force wants to destroy your Wu Xi force? Why didn't I know? Could it be that someone in my force went to Wu Xi's force without authorization to cause trouble? I'm really sorry. King Urshan started a fight and actually cheated. King Urshan, although I can't live in peace with you, I still admire you for your courage. But at this juncture, you still want to deny it? It seems that I have misjudged you. However, there is another prisoner here, what else can you say now? King Urshan felt that there was a familiar monster with a weak aura on the Edisha behind Jiayan. It was the subordinate of a certain powerful person in his second level. He was also a member of the team sent to deal with Wu Xi's forces before. Incompetent bungler. King Ertian secretly spat, and then stopped dwelling on this point. Jiayan, just tell me frankly. What did you want to do here today? King Urshan did not think that he would be defeated by Jiayan, but now he actually still has a glimmer of extravagant hope and wants to recruit Jiayan into Urshan's power, so he does not want to put the relationship on hold. But Jiayan's next words shattered his delusional heart and hit rock bottom. What am I here to do? Haha, King Urshan, the first point is to fulfill the promise between you and me, and then the second point. Your Urshan forces have existed in this 251-star area for a long enough time. I think today is the time for you to disappear. King Urshan, who had a natural expression at first, was startled when he heard this voice, and then anger welled up in his heart. You actually want to destroy our Urshan forces? That's too much to say. Very good, then let's fight. Let me see if your Jiayan's strength has reached the level of destroying our Urshan forces in a short period of time. Degree. King Urshan was angry. He knew that he had built the Urshan power from scratch to such an extent, but Jiayan actually wanted to destroy it. This was something he could not tolerate. Jiayan shook his head, then moved his body slightly. He actually entered the subspace directly. Huh? Your subspace talent has improved a lot. Experts will know if there is any as soon as they make a move. When King Urshan saw Jia Yan's action, he immediately understood that Jia Yan's progress was greater than he imagined. But he still doesn't think he will lose. Within 1 year, no matter how powerful you are, how can you cross 2 major levels and compare with the King of Heaven? Jia Yan's subspace talent is usually used for sneak attacks. As long as I guard against him, the threat is not great. As for the battleship behind him, I didn't detect any strong aura at all. There was only one who looked like Bai Arifo who was seriously injured. Bai Wangfu retreated while observing the status of Wu Xi's forces. He felt relieved because he did not see Wolfstar who was a threat to him. But while he was distracted and watching, Jia Yan, who he was originally worried about making a sneak attack from his side, actually appeared directly in front of him. What appears here is a front foot. The front foot is like a sword from the sky. As soon as it comes out of the subspace, it stabs at the King of Heaven. How? King Urshan was shocked. The opponent came much faster than he imagined. Moreover, he did not attack from the side, but attacked from the front. This was beyond his expectation. In this 10,000th of a second, he couldn't make too many thoughts or actions at all. He just burst out with all his speed and dodged towards the sound. The speed of this dodge was not unsatisfactory, but under the thrust of the forefoot, King Urshan still could not completely dodge. There was a bone-deep injury on his huge human-like head. Blood spattered out in the space. Jia Yan's giant mosquito true form faintly sprang out from behind its front legs, and King Ertian was shocked and had already hid several kilometers away. How could your strength reach this level? After King Urshan saw Jia Yan escaping from the subspace and causing him a nearly fatal wound, he didn't even bother to continue attacking and just stayed with Li Xingkong. He couldn't help but roared in shock. Haha, you don't understand. Jia Yan shook his head and entered the subspace again. I don't believe it. I was careless just now. There is no way you can hurt me this time. King Urshan roared angrily, his eyes looking in all directions like crazy. He was fully observing the space where Jia Yan would appear. But it's no use. Just as he looked to the left and right, Jia Yan did not change his attack method at all, and still appeared from the front of him. Still one front foot thrust forward, aiming at the center of King Urshan's head. Ah! Another wave of blood shot out from the sky, and another terrifying blood mark appeared on King Urshan's cheek. He finally discovered this time that it was not that he was able to dodge Jia Yan's attack, but that at the last moment when it hit him, Jia Yan actually deliberately changed the direction of his front foot, only injuring but not killing him. You, Jia Yan, you have reached this level of strength in a short period of time. Haha, you are indeed the existence I am optimistic about. King Urshan was almost crazy and kept uttering lies. Jia Yan calmed down, and then no longer entered the subspace. He walked calmly, soaring through the void in the starry sky, and walked towards King Urshan. I discovered you, Jia Yan, you can't kill me, Jia Yan. When King Urshan saw Jia Yan approaching, a look of panic finally flashed in his eyes, and then he kept retreating. His strength is far inferior to Jia Yan's. Anyone can tell from just 2 strikes. King Urshan cursed in his heart, damn it. He never thought that Jia Yan would improve so much in just 1 year of fighting, and he didn't even have the slightest backhand power. You discovered me? How come I didn't know? Jia Yan arrived not far from King Urshan, his eyes filled with murderous intent, and the words he spoke were a bit too much. His front foot shot out again like lightning. This is like marksmanship. King Urshan clearly felt that he saw Jia Yan's blow clearly, but when he stretched out his foot to block it, Jia Yan's front foot suddenly changed its trajectory, and then stabbed his right shoulder. Another splatter of blood splattered on the sky. Jia Yan, after you kill me, can you let the Urshan power go? I have worked hard all my life and I don't want to see it perish. King Urshan was almost desperate. He flew upside down and begged for mercy to Jia Yan in front of him. Since it is your life's hard work, Wouldn't it be a good thing to die with you? Jia Yan just wandered in front of King Ertian's voice, one fled and the other moved forward, but no matter how hard King Ertian tried, he still couldn't distance himself from Jia Yan. The frightened King Urshan didn't even realize that his figure was being pulled by a huge gravitational force and he couldn't fly fast at all. No, 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 Jia Yan, you can't destroy Urshan's power. Die with me. When King Urshan heard that Jia Yan wanted to destroy Urshan's power, a flash of madness appeared in his eyes, and then he hugged him forward, an unprecedented power filling his body. He actually mobilized all his strength, wanting to completely exploded his half-star power, forming an attack force comparable to a casual strike from a high-level half-star genius. But the power is great, but if the attack method is not good, no matter how powerful the power is, it will be useless. Before King Urshan came, Jia Yan shook his head, and his body entered the subspace like a swimming fish. Then, only a terrifying explosion of fire appeared in the starry sky. There seemed to be a small sun in the sky, and gamma rays were shooting everywhere like crazy. Ordinary people on Earth, let alone being directly bombarded by this force, can easily be killed by the radiation from the explosion alone. But this level of power is not fatal to Jia Yan. Even after he retreated into the subspace, he was not injured at all. Well, 1,500 kilometers away from the explosion, Jia Yan appeared in the starry sky. Jia Yan had known for a long time that King Urshan could not defeat him, but after his opponent died in his hands, he did not feel too happy. In the final analysis, this opponent caused the current situation because he wanted to win over him. Jia Yan didn't think there was anything wrong with the opponent. He just went too far in terms of chasing Wu Xi's forces. That's all. In this starry sky, good and bad are not absolute. Now it's the turn of the Urshan forces. Jia Yan didn't think so much anymore, but instead turned his attention to the Urshan power star not far away. The monsters on this planet were not slow to respond. Seeing that King Ertian died so easily in Jia Yan's hands, they didn't care about defensive artillery fire and simply ran away one by one. Wu Xi forces all living beings to obey orders. Jia Yan looked back at the 5 shabby warships of Wu Xi's force, and then issued an order. Kill me. Thanks to the book friend Yes Yang Chen for the tip. Thank you Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito author, Bulletin U. Chapter 937. As Jia Yan gave the order, the warships of Wu Xi's forces pounced out one by one like arrows from the string. These battleships were somewhat damaged during the previous defensive battle of Wu Xi's forces, but now they are still being launched. Apart from the 4 battleships of the Edisha, these are also the last battleships that Wu Xi's forces can move now. Among these battleships, there are a group of strong men that Wu Xi's forces can fight. Among them, there is only 1.5 star level by Wang Fu, and several others are at the sub-level. They drove battleships and attacked fiercely. The geniuses of the Urshan force who escaped for their lives were all far superior to the geniuses of the Wu Xi force. There were even a few semi-stellar geniuses among them. If they turned back and fought back, it would be impossible for the living beings of the Wu Xi force to resist. But now with Jia Yan's help, this group of geniuses don't dare to fight back at all. If there is a clue like this, Jia Yan will instantly pass through the layers of space, come to the side of the person who dares to fight back, and kill him. So the scene turned into a complete one-sided massacre. Run, run, run. This Jia Yan is too scary. Every genius is on the run. Jia Yan did not want to kill all the geniuses of the Urshan force. What he wanted to do was just to make this force disappear. If we really kill too many genius creatures, it might really lead to the intervention of genius battlefield officials, which would be troublesome. Wrong. Just as the half-star genius was escaping, he suddenly stopped flying. The half-star genius thought of something, and then turned his head, with a fierce look in his eyes. Jia Yan. Don't go too far. Now I give you a solemn warning. You must leave some incense and affection for our Urshan forces. You must know that our Urshan forces cannot be destroyed because there is a powerful person behind our Urshan forces. Power backer. He looked at Jia Yan, dozens of kilometers away, and seemed to feel emboldened because of this thought. Oh! Jia Yan heard the genius's voice from a distance, and then his figure faintly disappeared. When he reappeared, he was already in front of this semi-stellar genius. When the other party saw Jia Yan's appearance, his expression suddenly changed and he took a step back in fear. But Jia Yan didn't hurt him directly. You said that there are shadows of big forces behind your Urshan forces, Jia Yan asked. That's right. Our Urshan force is a branch of the Erlong force in the 132-star district. If you dare to destroy our Urshan force, the Erlong force will definitely not give up. Thinking of the forces behind him, the half-star genius suddenly gained confidence and his voice became louder. Is the Erlong force a very powerful force? Jia Yan wanted to laugh, but held it back. Of course, if the Erlong forces take action, it will be easy to wipe out the entire 251-star area. It's just that the official forces have rules, otherwise they would have unified a large area of the starry sky. The half-star monster had a strange attitude when seeing Jia Yan, thinking that Jia Yan was frightened by the name of the Erlong force. But just as he was about to say something, the moment he spoke, he saw an after-image flash before his eyes. A flash of blood appeared in the starry sky. You! The half-star genius looked at the wound on his chest with great horror, wanting to say something. Jia Yan actually dared to attack him when he revealed the forces behind him. He didn't understand that even if Jia Yan didn't know about Erlong's power, he still had to at least be confused. Sorry, I'm not afraid of the Erlong forces you mentioned. It should be said that the Erlong forces are afraid of me. Jia Yan's voice sounded faintly in his ears. And this voice became the last voice heard by this semi-stellar genius. As a genius, everyone in the Urshan force has attracted the attention of many people, but Jia Yan killed a lot of people in this battle. Even half-star geniuses have been killed several times. You must know that such geniuses can easily defeat ordinary half-star creatures when they go out to ordinary forces in the outside world. Among ordinary forces, they are all at the command level. Jia Yan killed them without any guilt. He finally understood that in the cosmic starry sky, strength requires countless living corpses to be forged. Besides, this is the other party's fault. The killings and drives continued. It is more reasonable to say that the creatures of the Wusai force are driving away rather than killing them. Their strength cannot be defeated by most escape geniuses, so most of the escapees from the Urshan force just escaped. Finally, the whole war came to an end. Jia Yan, in this battle, not a single genius in our Wusai force died, but not many geniuses in the Urshan force died except those you killed. Bai Wangfu came to Jia Yan with his injuries. He had used Jia Yan's reward material before, and now he had recovered a lot in the previous battle. He killed the most besides Jia Yan. Even though the entire Wusai force did not kill many enemies, relatively speaking, this was the Urshan force that was originally the number one in the sector. Being destroyed by the Wusai force at the bottom, it can be said that the Wusai force was extremely relieved. Okay, we don't need to do anything about the rest of Urshan's exiles. I think the surrounding forces will be very willing to help us. Now let's go and see what good things the Urshan forces have left for us. Bar. Jia Yan smiled, and then flew nonchalantly towards the Urshan power star that still had some defensive facilities. This astral defense has been used a lot, and most of it was used against Jia Yan before, but his space talent was too mysterious and artillery fire could not hurt him, so it became a unilateral defeat by Jia Yan. Jia Yan. Just as Jia Yan was flying to the Narshan celestial body, a voice reached Jia Yan's ears. Jia Yan looked around and saw a monster like a wolf shadow faintly appearing in the starry sky more than 1,000 kilometers away. It turned out to be Wolf Star, who had always been considered the strongest in the 251 star sectors. Wolf Star, you have been watching our battle before but did not show up. Now that you have come out, do you want to get a share of the pie? Jia Yan didn't seem surprised by the other party's arrival, and just asked indifferently. I don't dare. It's just that the Urshan force was destroyed by you. I want to ask you next, do you want the Wu Ci force to sit on the throne of the first force in 251? Wolf Star asked. He looked at Jia Yan, not daring to show a look of contempt in his eyes. Because he had completely seen the previous battle, and Jia Yan's strength shocked him. In fact, this Wolf Star is not that good. He protected Wu Ci's forces before just to be able to join hands with others to deal with the Urshan forces. He also had news about the Urshan forces' previous attack on Wu Ci's forces, but he had already heard about it. He did not take action because he felt that it would not be cost-effective to launch an all-out war between Wu Ci's forces and Urshan's forces. But he never expected that Jia Yan would come back strongly when Wu Ci's forces were facing a crisis, and even counterattacked, directly defeating the strongest Urshan force in the entire 251 sector. Now he has to come out just to ask Jia Yan what he thinks. If Jia Yan wants to occupy the first position, then he will keep a low profile. But if Jia Yan Z is not here, then the forces he belongs to will start to make arrangements immediately. No, Wolf Star, you also know that I can't stay in this 251 sector for long, and Wu Ci's force can't sit on the first throne. If you like the name of the first force, then take it. But we must ensure that we must treat the Wu Ci forces with high standards in the future. Otherwise, if I hear that the Wu Ci forces are in a bad situation in the Central Star region, I will definitely kill them. You understand what I mean? Jia Yan shook his head. He had no idea about the number 1 throne in the 251 star district, and he didn't want Wu Ci's forces to sit on it. You're going to the Central Star region. Wolf Star was shocked when he heard Jia Yan's words. He looked at Jia Yan and glanced up and down in disbelief. You must know that the Central Star region is like a legendary place to the genius creatures on this border. Even if everyone is in the genius battle zone, the difference between the Central Star region and the Edge Star region is heaven and earth. Wolf Star once had the idea of going to the Central Star area, but he couldn't get there at all. Not only was it a matter of distance, but he also understood that if he went there, he would only be a peripheral character everywhere, or even a marginal one. None of the characters can be. But now he actually heard that Jia Yan was going to the Central Star region? That's right, he is only in the late stage of Venerable, and he is actually able to fight against countless semi-stellar geniuses. Even I have no confidence in defeating him. I think such a genius can also make it in the Central Star region. Excellent. Thinking of Jia Yan's bright future, Lang Xing suddenly felt that the supreme status of the 251st sector he was planning was so ridiculous that he even lost interest. He hurriedly discussed some details with Jia Yan, which were all about protecting and supporting Wu Ci's power. Not long after, the Wolf Star figure slowly disappeared into the starry sky. Wolf Star is gone. Bai Wangfu's figure came to Jia Yan's side at some point. Well, Wu Ci's forces have no future troubles. As long as he doesn't get news of my departure from the genius battlefield or my death for a day, he won't dare to show any disrespect to Wu Ci's forces. Jia Yan nodded. Jia Yan, thank you. Bai Wangfu looked back at Jia Yan and thanked him. He seemed to have a lot to say, but at this moment, nothing came out. Haha, the wealth of Urshan's power is not of much use to me anymore. You can just accept it? Senior Bai Wangfu, I am leaving now. Jia Yan smiled freely, then turned around and said to Bai Huangfu. Don't you say goodbye to them. The little prince of the Lusai Empire who came with you still misses you all day long. Bai Wangfu sighed. No, I'm like this. I pass through many places and forget many people. Instead of making everyone uncomfortable, It's better to leave without saying goodbye. Jia Yan shook his head. Bai Wangfu also shook his head. Yes, there are many things worth remembering in life, and there are also many things that are missed. Being free and easy is a way to live. Then Jia Yan, I wish you a smoother road in the future. Finally, it has achieved something I couldn't even imagine, a stellar level. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 938. Is it stellar? Thank you, Senior Ji Yan. Maybe there will be another chance to meet in the future, but maybe we won't. Mr. Bai Wangfu, your previous help and teachings will be remembered by Jia Yan forever. Goodbye. Jia Yan will not tell Bai Wangfu that his future goal is not only to reach the star level, nor will he tell him how grateful he is to the senior for helping him. Everything is left unsaid. Goodbye. Bai Wangfu looked at the giant mosquito figure in front of him, slowly, disappearing into the starry sky of the universe. Jia Yan has entered the subspace. After a few more seconds, the Edissa, which was hundreds of kilometers away, started up. What's wrong? Master Jia Yan's car actually started. The geniuses of the Wuxi force, who were searching for the treasures of the Urshan force, all looked at the Edisha that was gradually leaving in surprise. Master Jia Yan has left. He has his own pursuits. With his talent and ambition, he is destined to never have any intersection with us again in this life. Bai Wangfu answered a group of confused monsters. No matter how puzzled, confused, and insecure the group of Wuxi power creatures were, Jia Yan left anyway. Not many regrets. I have only been in this 251st sector for a year or two, but I have received a lot of help. I also spent my weakest period in the genius battlefield here. On the Edissa, Jia Yan recalled the help Wuxi's forces had given him, and then sighed. Every parting is a time when the soul is touched, not just Jia Yan, but every intelligent life has a similar time. The same is true for people on Earth, such as graduation, resignation, and saying goodbye to travel friends you meet by chance. Every time you say goodbye, there are some people you will never see again, but this is life. Sour, sweet, bitter, spicy, and astringent, the 5 tastes together will make a complete life. Jia Yan suddenly wanted to sing. He wanted to sing the old Earth song Friends, and he also wanted to sing Stupid Boy. He felt that at this moment, he had more understanding of this kind of song. In the starry sky area that no one knows about, the Edissa is moving forward quickly, while the genius monster on board is constantly reminiscing. Perhaps no one in the world understands that lonely people are more afraid of loneliness, and lonely people are more afraid of loneliness. Every time loneliness surround me, it feels like being trapped by deep ice. It is more dangerous and more despairing than any strong person's energy package. Master, there is Adisha with you, Master. Adisha seemed to be able to understand Jia Yan's emotions, came to him and flew around quickly. Haha, you guy. Jia Yan smiled. Jia Yan's rapid arrival and departure caused whirlwind-like fluctuations in the 251 sector. The creatures in the entire sector were not only frightened because he almost single-handedly destroyed the Urshan forces, but also because of rumors that he leaving was to go to the central star region of Chuan and be amazed. Not to mention the central star sector, even if a person from the 251 star sector can come out of the middle star sector, it will be enough for the creatures in the 251 star sector to be proud for many years. But now Jia Yan, a genius who came to star 251 not long ago, actually went straight to the central star area after doing such a big thing. This made the creatures in star area 251 even more awe of Jia Yan. Obviously, at the same time, he also dared not deal with Wuxi's forces. Jia Yan's goal was finally achieved. The Edissa flew another 15 days. At this time, it was less than 10 days before the appointment with the monsters such as the Western bandits waiting in the central star area. but Jia Yan was still flying on the edge of the genius battlefield, which made Jia Yan a little worried about whether he could catch up with the scheduled battle. "Master, the place ahead is where Lord Longta and we are." When the time came exactly 7 days before the scheduled battle, Jia Yan drove the Edisha to an unfamiliar star area. This star area is sandwiched between the 132nd star area and the 147th star area. It is a place where no one cares. There are forces here, and even the strength of the forces is not weak. Huh? Could it be that this force is Lord Longta's teleportation place? It still sounds familiar. There were many spaceships and warships flying around. Jia Yan randomly asked one of them and quickly got the information in the starry sky. After searching online again, Jia Yan couldn't help but burst out laughing. It turned out that this force had also sent geniuses to fight against the Erlong force. Among them, there was a moderately talented sage that Jia Yan had fought before, and he was also the runner-up of the sage who looked like a mermaid. I still remember her. It seems that this venerable runner-up was not very friendly towards me. Jia Yan recalled it, and then shook his head helplessly. He never expected that Nalongta would actually arrange for the genius's power. Forget it, I don't know if we will encounter him yet. It's important to get things done quickly. When Jia Yan came to the central place of this power, his entry procedures were extremely simple, because what Longta gave him was a letter of approval from the official power. With this kind of book in hand, he could travel smoothly even in medium-sized star regions. "Welcome, Your Excellency Jia Yan, I have seen your genius battle. And the battle against outside geniuses was really eye-opening for me." When Jia Yan came to a huge star, a female monster that looked like a mermaid came to the starry sky and welcomed Jia Yan. The strength of this being was half a star, and while Jia Yan was observing her, the other party was also observing Jia Yan, who had just flown out of the Edisha. What a terrifying venerable person. The strength of this venerable person is indeed as shown in the video. Can he actually fight against a semi-star like us? The mermaid monster looked at Jia Yan in surprise. Jia Yan looked at the star below, and then said calmly, "Sorry, I'm a little pressed for time. Although I don't know why Senior Longta asked me to come here, I believe he must have a way for me to rush to the central star quickly. Because the time for my battle with Na Duojian is coming soon." "I understand. There is indeed a way to quickly rush to the central star area, and it is officially reserved here by Genius Battlefield. Our forces are just relying on this device to establish forces. Jia Yan, you have the approval letter from Senior Longta, so I naturally have no right to interfere." "But..." The mermaid monster looked at Jia Yan with some embarrassment. Is there any problem that cannot be solved? Jia Yan's heart skipped a beat, almost thinking that this quick method could no longer be used. "No, it's not that there's something wrong with the equipment, but we have a genius here who wants to use the energy you pass this time to go to the central star area together. I don't know if it's possible." The other party looked at Jia Yan hopefully. After her explanation, Jia Yan understood that this force was actually a branch of a major force in the central star region. In the past, they needed the fastest aircraft to maintain contact with the central star region, and it would take several years to fly to the central star region. Star area, and this time a genius happened to be transported to the central star area, and he wanted to use Jia Yan's clearance energy to go there together. I thought it was something. As long as one more person wouldn't have any impact, it would be fine. I agree. After hearing the reason, Jia Yan nodded indifferently. He thought it was a big deal. "Thank you. I know that Your Excellency Jia Yan is in an emergency. I will let her come out now and you can leave together." The half-star mermaid genius quickly took out the communicator with a smile. After a few dozen minutes, Jia Yan suddenly had a strange look on his face when he saw the so-called fellow traveler appearing in front of him. The other party was also shocked. "Why is it you?" she said in a pleasant voice, somewhat uncomfortable. It turns out that the monster traveling with Jia Yan is the mermaid's sister who was defeated by Jia Yan in the Erlong Genius battle and only won the second place. Jia Yan remembered her as a moderate genius, but he couldn't remember her name. Yeah, don't be so rude to your excellency Jia Yan. Although you are an average genius, you are far, far behind your excellency Jia Yan. Please apologize. The half-star genius mermaid saw this junior saying to Jia Yan Yan was so rude that he quickly cursed at her. You must know that although she is not afraid of Jia Yan can now grab the teleportation quota. If he refuses to agree to go with Ya, his forces will need to waste a lot of energy and to send Ya to the Central Star District. This is simply not cost-effective. I'm sorry, Jia Yan. The mermaid named Ya reluctantly apologized to Jia Yan. Naturally, Jia Yan didn't mind too much, but he didn't have a good impression of this so-called fellow traveler. There was almost no dialogue between the two. Under the leadership of the half-star mermaid monster, Jia Yan and Naya flew to the third place thousands of kilometers away from the powerful planet. Here, there is an object 50 kilometers in size that is similar to a black hole, but not similar. What a strange object. Jia Yan was shocked when he saw this object. He didn't even dare to get close. No one understood the horror of black holes better than him. Don't worry, Your Excellency Jia Yan, this is the official teleportation device of Genius Battlefield. Although it is very similar to a black hole, it is not the same thing at all. It is usually harmless. Seeing Jia Yan's appearance, the half-star mermaid monster knew that he had never seen anything like it before. He quickly explained. I've never even seen an astral body. You're such a country bumpkin. Naya had disliked Jia Yan all the way, and now she found an opportunity to mock Jia Yan. Yeah, don't go too far. Hearing this junior teasing Jia Yan again, the half-star mermaid scolded her again. She was afraid that even if Jia Yan teleported with Ya, he would immediately kill Ya when they got there. After all, this girl had such a bad mouth. It doesn't matter, but how to use this so-called astral body now? I don't have much time. If I waste more time on the road, I won't have time to compete with Duojian. Jia Yan glanced at the moderately talented mermaid monster, his eyes no sadness or joy, just said this lightly. Okay, let's start now, the half-star mermaid said quickly. KSB. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 939. While preparing for the semi-stellar mermaid monster, Jia Yan opened his portable brain and checked the information about the astral body. It turns out that astral teleportation is a technology that has been used in high-tech star fields for a long time. Its function is to transmit items and even lives between two astral teleporters with the function of receiving and releasing. The star teleportation body in front of Jia Yan is one of the astral teleportation bodies in the Genius Battlefield. Naturally, it cannot be set up by a certain force, because no force has such a big hand. It comes from the Genius Battlefield official. So that's it? Not only does the construction of the star teleportation body require a lot of resources, but even opening it once requires huge resources. No wonder ordinary forces can't build and use it by themselves. When Jia Yan saw the amount of resources needed to activate the astral body, even he was secretly stunned. And this mermaid force must have been established since then, and was entrusted by the official to manage the astral body. After all, this kind of thing is generally not turned on. When Jia Yan was looking at the starborn information, the mermaid monster Xiao on the side looked at Jia Yan's appearance with a scornful attitude, and spit out, "Country bumpkin," and then ignored Jia Yan. If Yan heard it, he turned his head to other places with disdain. Jia Yan was a little surprised. It was not like this middle-level genius had never seen her own strength, especially after the battle with the genius from the Stellar Academy. She should be a little in awe of herself. How could she still have such an attitude? But the other party's emotions were none of Jia Yan's business. He just regarded this bad-tempered mermaid monster as nothing. Not long after, the half-star mermaid monster returned to where Jia Yan and the two were. "It's ready, you can set off," he said to Jia Yan affectionately. "By the way, please ask Your Excellency Jia Yan to take care of Xiao on the way. She has been spoiled in our influence, and her birth is actually quite special. If there is any danger on the way to the teleportation, please help Your Excellency Jia Yan help. The Tianhe forces in the Central Star region will reward you generously." The other party also included the sentence in the pleasantries with Jia Yan. The Tianhe force, Jia Yan was startled, and then he seemed to think of it. He had seen on the internet that a certain central star power in the genius battlefield was called the Tianhe force. Jia Yan nodded, but deep down he understood that the other party was warning him. After all, Jia Yan's relationship with Xiao didn't seem to be that good. Of course, he also knew that this mermaid named Xiao seemed to have something to do with the Central Star region. No wonder even he looked down on her. But it was only a short period of time. Jia Yan had a fly in his ear during this period, so he just tolerated it. "Humph, are you afraid now?" Xiao obviously really takes herself very seriously. Even Jia Yan, a genius who is clearly a high-level genius, dares to talk wildly. Jia Yan stopped talking to her. The two of them went to the bottom of the circle of nothingness together. When he came here, Jia Yan felt that this circle-like object several kilometers in size was indeed different from a black hole. There is some brilliance inside it, and what is revealed in the dense black is not gravity, but a peaceful force. Although I cannot say that there will be no waves, at least it is not as violent as a black hole. The half-star mermaid monster took out something like a remote control and gestured to Jia Yan. After seeing Jia Yan indicating that she was ready, she pressed a button on the remote control. Jia Yan looked at the changes above his head. In the circle of a few kilometers, the dense air changed rapidly. The clean air and the turbid air inside slowly separated, and then the center point inside seemed to form a kind of passage. It's just that the center of the passage is extremely bright, and even with Jia Yan's eyesight, he can't see anything in the center. "Your Excellency Jia Yan, Xiao, you can enter now." The half-star mermaid monster said this to the two of them. After hearing her words, Jia Yan and Xiao began to fly towards the small light spot in the sky. Entering this kind of space for the first time, Jia Yan looked around strangely. Especially when entering the circle, he looked at the surrounding space carefully and saw that in these spaces, twisting spaces were tumbling, but they could not affect the passage they entered. What a terrible distortion! Even if I were touched by this distorted space, I would definitely die. After Jia Yan felt the power of the distorted space in surprise, he was shocked in his heart. No wonder it is said that in this genius battlefield, it is impossible for ordinary forces to have such a star transmission channel, because to stabilize this twisted space is not something that can be done at the semi-star level, at least it requires a star-level powerhouse. Made it? After passing through the dense air, Jia Yan and the mermaid Xiao had completely entered the passage. Theoretically, this place is no longer the same place as the outside universe. The two bodies were stretched longer and longer by the twisted space, and they were also somewhat twisted and deformed. Well, Jia Yan found that Xiao seemed to be entering the astral body channel for the first time, and she looked a little uncomfortable at the moment. In the twisted space, non-space gifted beings have to endure several times more pain than ordinary creatures. It is normal for her to behave like this. Naturally, Jia Yan wouldn't care about her. They flew again and gradually entered the light channel. Jia Yan looked back and saw that the space behind him was no longer obvious. Even the exit was closed at some point, and the half-star mermaid monster also disappeared. Finally, the two of them rode the spiral power of the light spot channel and arrived at the center of the light spot. Only when he arrived here did Jia Yan discover that the center of the light spot that could not be seen clearly before turned out to be a white planet with a diameter of several hundred kilometers. Even the planets were brought into this passage. What a big deal! Jia Yan was so amazed. Looking at this star, he almost thought that this could only be obtained by a galaxy-level being. Not necessarily. Maybe some extremely powerful stars can create such a thing. I don't have much understanding of the horrors of star level yet. Jia Yan sighed silently. Jia Yan and the mermaid monster Xiao landed on the white star together. Then they only felt the star suddenly shake. Jia Yan saw that in the dense space around him, a thrust from the front of the star directly pierced a rupture. Then the entire star broke through the dense space and flew forward quickly. No wonder it's called astral body. This is what astral body means. It's actually a real star traveling in the dense land. Jia Yan didn't even know where the space he entered at this moment was. He vaguely understood that it had something to do with space, but he couldn't quite understand it yet. Well, the speed of this astral body traveling through cracks in subspace should be guaranteed. I don't need to worry. I just need to rest here and improve my strength. Of course, the space around this place is very important to me. There are also some benefits to understanding space, and now I'll have a good understanding of it here. After Jia Yan made a plan, he slowly stabilized his body on the star body, improving and comprehending his strength. You must know that he still has a battle with Duo Jian. Although his strength has improved recently, Duo Jian once said that he would understand a secret skill of a self-generated powerful clan. Jia Yan is not very sure about taking it now. Jia Yan felt safe, but the mermaid monster who was also on the white star was not so comfortable. Her strength is far different from that of Jia Yan, and she is not gifted with space. Here, it is like being on a big ship that requires constant caution. There is a constant pulling and twisting force on her body, making her must use all strength to resist. But Jia Yan would not really take care of her, and this arrogant lady would not accept it. The two sides just calmed down slowly. At the same time that Jia Yan left the circle of nothingness, in the empty starry sky far beyond the mermaid's influence, a huge aircraft also faintly entered the subspace. It was extremely fast, heading towards the central star area of the Genius battlefield. But although this speed is fast, it is slower than Jia Yan, who is rushing through the dense space. It will take at least several years to reach it. It seems that Jia Yan will be lonely for a long time again. Find bookstore. The Genius battlefield is a place where several superpowers jointly established and devoted countless energy and resources to create the cradle of the strong. Looking at the tens of thousands of light years around, the Genius battlefield ranks at the top of several major forces that train newcomers, especially the nearest stellar academic field, which is almost on par. The cultivation concepts of the Stellar Academy and the Genius battlefield are somewhat different. In addition, the superpowers behind the two sides are almost sworn enemies, which makes the two holy places also full of gunpowder. The Genius battlefield has a strong sense of hierarchy. The further you go to the center, the more prosperous it becomes and the more resources there are, especially the powerful rookie talents. There is a popular saying in the Genius battlefield, that is, outsiders are not geniuses. This represents the disapproval of the geniuses in the central star region to the geniuses in the outer regions, especially the geniuses in the edge star regions. They do not recognize them as geniuses in the battlefield at all. But on this day, a passage from an external star to the central star that should not have been opened at all was slowly opened at the edge of a certain central star. Because no one had ever thought that this passage that had not been opened for countless years would one day be opened again. When this passage was opened, no genius or force noticed this scene. In this unattended universe, a dense circle appeared. Then, in the center of the mist, a bright white object slowly emerged. It grew from small to large. What was originally a small dot turned into a huge monster that looked like an extremely huge star in an instant. When this huge star reached the edge of the dense land, it braked to a stop as if it was momentarily still. Not long after, two monsters of similar size flew out from the star. Is this the central star region? Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 940. After almost 3 days of flying in the dense land, Jia Yan and the mermaid monster Xiao arrived in the starry sky. The starry sky here does not seem to be much different from the outside world. Creatures that can feel the power of the universe can feel the difference here. What a strong sense of power! If you practice here, the speed may be twice as fast as the edge of the genius battlefield. Compared to the outside of the genius battlefield, it is much faster. Jia Yan felt the energy around him, and then breathed lightly with enjoyment. Hillbilly. The mermaid monster Xiao was beside Jia Yan and taunted her in a low voice at the right time. Jia Yan didn't care about her at all, but took out the smart brain and turned on the communication function on it. He was still a little nervous when he dialed the communication number. You must know that now he was actively communicating with a star. But not long after, the communicator showed that the other party refused to accept communications from ordinary numbers, and the system also announced that Jia Yan needed to make an appointment, which made him smile bitterly. Senior Longta must have forgotten that I am an ordinary genius and do not have direct authority to communicate with him. Jia Yan shook his head with a wry smile. Unexpectedly, he had rushed to the central star area, but due to communication restrictions, Jia Yan was unable to contact Longta. Perhaps because he recognized Jia Yan's strength too much, Longta forgot that Jia Yan was still an ordinary genius. In theory, such a genius would not have the authority to communicate with an official star powerhouse in the genius battlefield, even if he had the other party's number. Will also be rejected. In fact, Longta didn't forget that he had already adjusted Jia Yan's genius level before. However, it takes a certain amount of time to upgrade a genius in the genius battlefield. In addition, Jia Yan crossed the border again and came from the edge of the genius battlefield in one breath. In the central star region, this made him still an ordinary genius here, and he had no authority to communicate with Longta. Originally, this situation would not delay any major events. After all, what major events would happen to a genius who has just arrived in the central star region, no matter how talented he is? But Jia Yan happens to have one. He wants to fight Na Dojian on behalf of Genius Battlefield. Well, Xiao, is the force you want to go too far away? Jia Yan turned around and asked the mermaid Xiao reluctantly. Does it matter to you whether it's far away or not? Xiao glared at Jia Yan, but Jia Yan glanced at the brain star map in her hand, and it immediately remained like an engraving. He soon discovered that the galaxy force marked on Xiao's star map actually coincided with the dense circle of the star transmission body. No wonder Xiao didn't leave directly. Sure enough, not long after, a battleship appeared in the starry sky where there was no man-made object in sight. This is a battleship about 500 meters long. This battleship was too fast. Jia Yan clearly discovered that the opponent's speed in the starry sky exceeded the Edis's speed by more than one category. Just a little smaller. The battleship came to Jia Yan and the mermaid monster Xiao very smoothly. He was so small that Jia Yan felt uncomfortable next to the battleship. You just came here via astral transmission, right? Just as Jia Yan and Xiao were observing the battleship, an indifferent voice came from inside. Yes, Xiao looked overjoyed when she saw a big river-like sign on the battleship. Then she took a step forward and came to the front of the battleship pretending to be arrogant. Huh? Mermaid tribe, it seems that you are the person sent by one of the marginal branches this time. Okay, then come in. A monster that looked like a lion appeared in the battleship. His strength was at the second level. He seemed to have surging brainwave power, which surprised both Jia Yan and Na Xiao. The talent of this being is actually a middle-level genius, not an ordinary middle-level genius. At least it is much more powerful than the 132-star sub-level middle-level genius. Senior, I am the disciple sent here this time. Thank you very much, Senior, for coming to greet me. Xiao saw that the lion monster recognized her origin, and quickly established a relationship with him. She looked completely different from the one who kept giving Jia Yan a bad look before. Haha, what disciple? Did the person in charge of your branch force tell you this? It's a joke. An ordinary mid-level genius still wants to become a disciple of the Tianhe force. What do you think of yourself? After hearing what the little mermaid said, the lion monster suddenly burst into laughter. Senior, what do you mean by this? The senior of my family said that I came to this Tianhe force as a potential disciple candidate of our branch. Although I am not a high-level genius, I think I have some strength. When even the disciples can't do it? Xiao's demeanor changed a little. She dared to look down on Jia Yan before, and she dared to look down on Jia Yan because she thought that she was going to be a disciple of the Tianhe force in the Central Star region, and she was not as good as Jia Yan, who had no roots and no feet. Geniuses are different, so I dare to look down on Jia Yan. But now this lion monster actually said that she didn't come to Tianhe City to be a disciple at all. This is a bit embarrassing. Little girl, let me tell you, do you think that you, a mid-level genius, can be considered very powerful in the Central Star area of the genius battlefield? I really want to laugh. If you have any unique talents, it would be reasonable, but if you don't have a unique talent, a mid-level genius will just serve as a servant in this Tianhe force. Do you understand what a servant means? Like me, you just do some delivery and pick up work every day, which is considered good. After Guan Tianke laughed for a while that time, he shook his head and said, but even this is many times better than being in the Edge Star area. You can go back with me. Servants will be servants. You will definitely find that your improvement is better than in the Edge Star area. The sector is faster. By the way, if this person is not from your Edge Star branch, there is no need to follow us. Not just any cat or dog can get in from our Tianhe forces. The lion monster said this to the ugly-faced Xiao, then looked at Jia Yan, as if he saw that Jia Yan was not with Xiao, and then shook his head indifferently, ignoring Jia Yan. Ha, of course he is not with me, he is just a country bumpkin. Xiao finally found a sense of presence in Jia Yan, sneered and insulted Jia Yan in passing. Jia Yan sighed. He could tell that this mermaid monster would not recommend him. No one else could help, he had to rely on himself. Senior, please stay here. I have something to do and want to visit the Gui Tianhe forces. I wonder if you can recommend a certain semi-star level senior to me. Jia Yan thought, the Tianhe force is also a force in the Central Star region. There should be geniuses in the force who can communicate directly with a certain genius battlefield official. No matter who they contact, as long as they can transfer the communication to Long Tower, they will have achieved their goal. This is why he wants to visit the Tianhe forces. Ah! The lion monster who opened the hatch and let the mermaid Xiao aboard the battleship turned around with a sneer upon hearing this. He looked at Jia Yan mockingly. You want to visit a certain half-star master from my Tianhe force? I heard you right. Haha, Jia Yan, you still don't believe me, you're a country bumpkin. It's not that simple to visit the half-star geniuses of the Tianhe forces. Do you think this is still the 132nd star sector, and you can still defeat the half-star geniuses here? A half-star powerhouse. Before Xiao entered the battleship hatch, she also turned back with a look of disdain. What? You said he can defeat a half-star strongman? Or a half-star strongman in my genius battlefield? Just after Xiao finished taunting Jia Yan, the lion monster suddenly became shocked. That's right, this country bumpkin's name is Jia Yan. I don't know which corner star district he came from. He once defeated several half-stars in our 132-star district. Do you think he is funny? He defeated several half-stars from the countryside. If you are a star, you think you are a genius, so what if you are a high-level genius? If you come to this central star region, you will be rejected by our TNE forces. Shut up. Just as the mermaid monster Xiao continued to laugh and taunt Jia Yan, the lion monster's face became increasingly ugly. When he heard what Xiao was going to say, he roared with the power of his brain waves. This sir, please. Please excuse me for asking, are you really a genius? The lion monster lowered its head cautiously, not daring to look at Jia Yan, and asked respectfully. Jia Yan was startled, and Xiao, who was about to enter the battleship's cabin, was also startled. After hearing about Jia Yan's talent, the lion monster behaved like a servant. However, Jia Yan didn't pause too much. As his thoughts were turning, he had already answered. That's probably true. I once won the semi-star champion of several forces in the genius battle of the 132nd star district where this mermaid tribe is located. The inspector also said it himself, I am a high-level genius. It was okay that Jia Yan didn't say anything. After saying all this, the lion monster could hardly stand. His legs and feet were weak, and he almost collapsed in the air. Winning the semi-stellar championship. A venerable? Even if you are from the fringe star area, it is incredible. This. He looked at Jia Yan, who was confused, and saw that his expression was a little confused. He quickly stood up and bowed respectfully to Jia Yan. Sir, my lord, I didn't know your talent before, please forgive me. Now I will give you a communication. Our TNE forces know your arrival, and there will definitely be half-star seniors coming to greet you. Please wait a moment, I will inform them to arrange for a large welcome ship to come over. Here, this senior, he is just a country bumpkin. Don't be scared by him, he is really. Xiao was already dizzy. Seeing that the lion monster was becoming more and more respectful to Jia Yan, she felt a little uncomfortable and said something behind her. Get out. You almost killed me, the lion monster roared. This roar contained the power of aggressive brain waves, and the mermaid instantly spat out blood and became sluggish. Thanks to book friend 1506191549400025 for the tip. Thank you. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 941. What's going on? He is obviously just a country bumpkin, and I am the genius who came to be a disciple in this TNE force. How could this happen? Xiao looked at the lion monster hurriedly communicating in the battleship, feeling a little confused. You know, this is completely different from what she originally thought. When she was in the 132-star district, she always knew that she was different from other creatures. Even the monsters with moderate talents in the 132-star district, she despised because she understood that she had obtained the ability to enter the 132-star district. There are quotas in the central star region, and other middle-level geniuses simply don't have this opportunity. So when she met Jia Yan, she looked down on Jia Yan. Later, although Jia Yan showed the talent of a high-level genius, she always thought that high-level geniuses were also bad people in the central sector. People like Jia Yan arrived in the central star region without roots and without ping, and was completely incomparable to her. But what he saw now made him confused. When Jia Yan arrived in the central star region, he should have been completely trampled under his feet, but why did the senior lion monster treat him with such respect? Everything is like a replica of the one in the 132nd sector. Jia Yan was also a little stunned. He finally came to his senses after the lion monster arranged everything. Not long after, a huge warship arrived in this desolate starry sky. This must be Your Excellency Jia Yan. I am a foreign affairs elder from the TNE force. I came late to greet you. I am sorry for you. A monster that was obviously unusual flew down from the battleship, which was even larger than the Aditya. And in the battleship, rays of brilliance suddenly flashed, like welcoming a distinguished guest. Jia Yan felt the strength of this semi-star genius, and then his expression was shocked. It turns out that the opponent is a half-star strong man with moderate genius. Despite his amiable expression now, if he were to launch an attack, he could probably wipe out even the 132nd sector by himself. Jia Yan is definitely no match. He quickly flew forward and said, "Senior, it's my fault that I took the liberty to come here. I'm sorry for disturbing you." Jia Yan was quite respectful to the other party, which seemed to make the other party enjoy it. After nodding, he and Jia Yan boarded the huge welcoming warship. "What else are you looking at?" "A high-level genius. The first time you met me, no, when you communicated with me, you should have made it clear that I was almost killed by you. You must know that he was a high-level genius. Do you understand?" "Understand." Outside the relatively small battleship of several hundred or so, the lion monster saw Xiao, the mermaid monster. He still stared blankly at Jia Yan being picked up by a half-star senior who could tell that it was not simple. He immediately lost his temper. Senior, I'm sorry, I want to ask, aren't high-level geniuses very common in the Central Star region? Why do you treat Jia Yan so favorably?" "Am I not from the Central Star region?" Xiao was unwilling to accept it. Asked. "Haha, it's common? You little mermaid guy, did your head get damaged somewhere in the astral body channel? There are many high-level geniuses in our high-level star regions, but they are not overwhelming. Even in central stars like our Tianhe forces, there are only a few small forces in the district, so if any high-level genius comes over, we have to fight for it, do you understand? Any high-level genius has to fight for it like this, but a middle-level genius like me can only be a slave." This. Xiao could hardly accept this. "You just came here and don't understand yet, but you will know in the future. The influence of each high-level genius is amazing, especially for small forces like us. Of course, for big forces and top-level forces, high-level geniuses will not. It doesn't matter. In short, read more and learn more. Is it all in vain? If you offend a high-level genius of your own force, fortunately he is not a top-level existence among high-level geniuses, otherwise you will not die even if he says a bad word about you. He is a top-level existence among high-level geniuses, and even one bad word about me is not enough to kill me." Xiao was stunned, because she thought that Jia Yan seemed to be a top-level high-level genius in Nalongta's stellar mouth. The lion monster didn't care about Xiao's blankness. When he saw her entering the battleship, he started the battleship. Different from the small battleship at the rear, in the huge welcoming battleship flying slowly in front, Jia Yan was invited aboard by the half-star monster who claimed to be the Tianhe force. "Haha, Your Excellency Jia Yan, we are here in a bit of a hurry. We only have one welcome ship, so I hope you don't mind." The half-star monster didn't pay much attention to Jia Yan, especially after knowing that Jia Yan had just come from the Edge Star area. He also knew that this kind of battleship must be enough in the eyes of the opponent, so he began to test it intentionally or unintentionally. "I just heard from my subordinates that Your Excellency Jia Yan came from the 132-star district. I wonder which senior star identified your talent." "That's right, I came from the 132nd star district, and it was Senior Longta who recognized my talent," Jia Yan responded. "Senior Longta? It turned out to be him. I had heard of his name when I first entered the genius battlefield more than 100 years ago. At that time, he was still a powerful semi-star level high-level genius. He could be recognized by Master Longta. Your strength must be right." After hearing Jia Yan's answer, the half-star genius half believed it. "You must know that the genius battlefield officials will redefine the geniuses who come to the Central Star region, such as high-level geniuses and top-level geniuses. They all value them very much. This kind of thing cannot be deceived, especially the identification of geniuses. The forces in the central star area can check and test it out easily. After all, the combat power of high-level geniuses is terrifying. So after hearing Jia Yan's answer, this semi-star genius was almost excited. You must know that a Zhen who has just arrived in the central area of the genius battlefield can easily join the first force he encounters. Although there are several high-level geniuses in their Tianhe force, they are not enough. If a new person joins, then very good. Jia Yan was vaguely aware of the other party's intention, but now he would not agree to such a thing. After all, he had more important things to do. What, are you here to fight the geniuses in the stellar academic field? When Jia Yan revealed his purpose for coming to the central star region, the half-star monster was so shocked that he stood up from his crouching position. He looked at Jia Yan, the look of horror in his eyes was extremely eye-catching. You must know that in the genius battlefield's external genius battle, those who can participate will be the best among high-level geniuses. After all, this kind of battle involves the face of the genius battlefield, and ordinary high-level geniuses cannot participate. Of course, top geniuses are usually very good at participating in this kind of battle, because it is no longer a shame. Every top genius is a treasure in the genius battlefield and the stellar academic field, and they also need to keep their strength secret, so they participate. There are only a handful of similar challenges. Even so, those who can represent and fight with members of the stellar academic domain must be the top beings among the advanced geniuses. It should even be said that they are regarded by the stellar class as nearly invincible beings in the entire class. And this Jia Yan is actually one of them. This kind of existence is almost like a legend to the half-star genius in front of him. Your Excellency Jia Yan, how offensive I am. I didn't know before that you were actually a hero participating in foreign wars. If I had known earlier, I should have sent all the welcome ships in our force to greet you. Well, this is too exaggerated. Senior, you don't have to be like this. Jia Yan was startled and quickly shook his head. You must know that he just wants to contact Senior Longta in this Tianhe force, but he does not dare to disturb others too much. Your Excellency, Jia Yan's matter is extremely urgent. I will make arrangements right away so that you can contact a certain stellar senior when you arrive at our headquarters. The half-star powerhouse quickly dialed several communication numbers. You must know that even in the central star region, it is difficult for forces to directly contact the official powerhouses of the genius battlefield, especially forces with average strength, such as Tianhe forces. There are some procedures to go through. The half-star genius was dialing the number on the side, his whole body trembling. It's impossible for him not to be excited. You must know that this is a genius who can participate in external battles. It is impossible for the genius battlefield official to send a genius with insufficient strength to act as his front man. Longta can value this Jia Yan, and his talent is destined to be the top among all high-level geniuses. Among his Tianhe forces, not to mention the top high-level geniuses, there is not even a single middle-level genius. If he could win over Jia Yan to join the force, his merits would be immeasurable. A top-level high-level genius, this is a legendary top-level high-level genius. A high-level genius who is only below the top-level genius. As long as he does not die, he is destined to be promoted to the star level and will be the best in his class. Stellar level. That half-star genius is going to be a demon. After unplugging the communication, this half-star with a moderate genius was like a child with insufficient concentration, and his words were trembling. Fortunately, he was far away from Jia Yan and had blocked the power of brain waves. Otherwise, Jia Yan would I was embarrassed in front of Yan. But the monsters who picked up the communication were not much better. After knowing that this half-star elder had actually welcomed a top high-level genius who had just arrived in the central star region, almost all of them were excited and incoherent. After a long time, the flying welcome ship arrived at a large residential star area smoothly but quickly. This is the area where the forces in the central star region live. Jia Yan passed the bridge and was stunned when he saw the scene outside. It turns out that where the headquarters of the Tianhe force is located, there are stars scattered throughout almost millions of kilometers. Some are commercial stars, some are weapons stars for combat professionals, and some are life stars. There are hundreds or even thousands of stars, large and small. Compared with them, Wuxi's forces in the 251st sector only have one main star, which is like a country bumpkin. There are too many strong people. Jia Yan also saw people flying in the starry sky, including battleships and single-person strong men. Anyway, the stars were not far apart. There were geniuses who exuded the strength of half-star or sub-level strong men, or even only the venerable level. All flying around among the stars. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 942. Moiwan Literature Network. For more information, please log in to the unique address of Moiwan Literature Network, mobile reading login. Welcome your visit /U003E /U003E /U003E. Chapter 15. You were squeezed out? Please read the original version. Among these geniuses, almost all were middle-level geniuses, and there were a few low-level beings. Almost all of them had their heads lowered and did not dare to look at others. When the welcome ship that Jia Yan was on flew here, the half-stars, as well as the Sig-1 level and venerable level geniuses all stopped completely and gave in to the welcome ship. Those who can ride on the welcome ship are all powerful VIPs in Tianhe, so they will naturally make concessions to the welcome ship. Your Excellency Jia Yan, how is our Tianhe force headquarters doing? The half-star elder didn't know when he hung up the communication, came to Jia Yan, and then asked a little show-off. He knew that Jia Yan came from the edge of the genius realm, so he had never seen such a grand scene before. The name of the central star region is indeed well deserved. I never thought that I could see such a prosperous scene in the starry sky. Jia Yan did not hide his praise for the scene in front of him. Haha, although our Tianhe force is just an ordinary force in the central star region, we are very powerful in terms of power planning and appearance. If you can catch your attention, you are our wrong Xin. The few chatted some more, and Jia Yan learned a lot about the Tianhe forces. However, when he asked questions about the forces in the surrounding star areas, the half-star elder would faintly pull the question in other directions. Jia Yan knew why the other party was like this, but he didn't point it out anyway. Not long after, millions of miles passed by, and the welcome ship arrived outside the central star of Tianhe force. The scene here is different again. The entire central star is covered with buildings. People who don't know it think they have reached the big forces in the outer star field. But this is just a star built by a group of geniuses in the genius domain. It is almost the same as the administrative stars in the outside world. Okay, Your Excellency Jia Yan, let's go down. It seems that their preliminary communication work has been completed. After the half-star elder received some more communications, he led Jia Yan off the huge welcome ship. After getting off the welcome ship, Jia Yan saw clearly the appearance of the main star of the Tianhe force, and even he felt a little breathless. This star is the size of the Earth, and its upper biological environment and technological creations have reached a perfect balance. What the half-star elder said before was indeed correct. At least this was the first time for Jia Yan to see such a harmonious technological star. If you practice on this star, your strength will definitely improve very quickly. Jia Yan came up with this idea. The two of them moved forward together, and it seemed that they had received some reward. The monsters on the planet all greeted Jia Yan. When a semi-star genius, especially a mid-level genius, welcomes him, It makes Jia Yan feel comfortable. The Tianhe forces did a great job in advance. Welcome to the arrival of Your Excellency Jia Yan. I am Tian Rongguang, the #1 talker in the Tianhe forces. When Jia Yan and the half-star elders flew to the empty platform of an extremely tall building, one of the several half-star geniuses waiting in the place where birds were singing and fragrant came out. When he saw this semi-star genius, Jia Yanhun was shocked. He finally knew the strength of the #1 among the Tianhe forces. For the first time, I understood why this place is called the Central Star Sector. It turns out that this Tian Rongguang is actually a semi-stellar genius with high genius talent. A half-star with medium talent, Jia Yan can only look up to his neck, and a half-star with a high genius is almost like heaven and earth to Jia Yan, completely unable to fight against him. The difference between geniuses is so cruel. You must know that there have long been rumors in the genius domain that the star level whose strength has been weakened in the genius domain may even be under siege by hundreds of high-end and semi-star level geniuses. As for the semi-stars with medium talents, no amount of them can weaken the strength of one star. And this Tian Rongguang is one of the talented people who may threaten the stellar level. The first time he saw him, Jia Yan felt as if the entire world was pressing down on him. A pressure he had never felt before made him almost want to escape. This is the semi-star level strength of a high-level talent. I've met Senior. Jia Yan quickly saluted Tian Rongguang respectfully. No need to be polite, just like Tian Tisu said, Your Excellency Jia Yan is indeed a talented young man with outstanding talents. Yes, yes. Tian Rongguang seemed to have measured Jia Yan's talent a long time ago. At this time, he changed his previous behavior of using coercion to shake Jia Yan. Instead, he calmed down and looked kindly towards Jia Yan. It turns out that the elder's name was Tiantisu. It was only because Tiantisu was so shocked by Jia Yan's talent that he forgot to introduce himself. Come on, Your Excellency Jia Yan, the communication you mentioned has been completed. You will be able to communicate with Senior Longta soon. That day, Rongguang led Jia Yan forward, followed by a terrifying being of 1.5 stars level. Jia Yan quietly observed for a moment, and then realized that the semi-star geniuses behind him all had the same talent as Tisu that day. Although they are also semi-star geniuses, they are only middle-level geniuses. Of course, they are not destined to be ordinary middle-level talents, otherwise they would not be able to follow Tian Rongguang. Probably in the entire Tianhe force, only Tian Rongguang, a highly talented semi-star, exists. Of course, this is scary enough. Jia Yan followed Tian Rongguang as he walked. He also noticed that there were some slightly interested glances in this huge building. Those were the looks of several people who gave Jia Yan a hint of pressure. They were two sages who seemed to have high-level talents, and a second-level genius who looked at him with disdain. Your Excellency Jia Yan, this is where we communicate with Senior Seeing. Please hang up the communication. Tian Rongguang took Jia Yan to a building, and then motioned Jia Yan to a certain piece of equipment. He and the mid-level talented semi-stars around him have no intention of leaving. Jia Yan nodded, and then came outside the huge communicator. He still doesn't know that ordinary forces need to use such a mysterious and complicated machine to communicate with senior official forces. Fortunately, the operations were similar. Jia Yan looked at the virtual screen and then pressed the default button. Little guy, you must be Jia Yan. Before Jia Yan could speak, there were words from the other side. It's this junior. Jia Yan was stunned for a moment, then nodded calmly. The existence on the opposite side of the screen, created through virtual light and shadow, is a spotted seal-like monster. Even if you don't think he is scary just by looking at his appearance, Jia Yan knows very well that the other person is a star-level person and can kill him with just a few words. Jia Yan, I just went to investigate your matter, but I have to tell you something regrettable. The spotted seal's eyes were kind, but his words gave Jia Yan some bad premonitions. Sure enough, the spotted sea dog monster said to Jia Yan again, your participation quota has been squeezed out by another top high-end talent. When Longta told me before, he was also very depressed. He didn't. I saw you face to face and said that I wanted to apologize to you. Jia Yan was stunned, and even the semi-star geniuses behind him felt a little stunned. How is it possible, Senior? Senior Longta clearly made an appointment with me to meet Na Duojian in a month, and now someone has snatched my place. How is it possible? Jia Yan asked blankly. This, Jia Yan, I advise you not to pursue it any further. This involves some battles between the genius domain officials, which you are not able to participate in now. Well, I see you, just stay here and behave like a Tianhe force. Practice, you must know that I also came out of the Tianhe forces. Well, I can't say any more, goodbye. After the sea dog monster said these words, he hung up the communication directly. After the communication was completed, Jia Yan was still a little stunned. You must know that he came to the central star area just to be with Duo Jian, and even rushed to Lu for so long, but he didn't expect that the other party would let him go easily with just one word. Your Excellency Jia Yan, don't think too much. This kind of thing is not unprecedented in the genius field. Tian Rongguang from behind said this to Jia Yan somewhat calmly. Tian Rongguang's expression was a little surprised. Although he knew that Jia Yan's talent was terrible before, he didn't have much idea of inviting him, because if such a genius were to compete with that stellar academic genius, no matter the outcome, as long as he didn't die, he will definitely become famous immediately. By then, the top forces in the Central Star region who know that he has not joined any Central Star region forces will grab people like sharks who have smelled it. In that case, his Tianhe power would be just like the fringe forces and would not be enough. But it's different now. Jia Yanran has been excluded and can't participate in that event. Although he was unable to participate in the competition, it was due to a gap between the genius domain official department. Jia Yanben's strength was definitely ranked at the top talent level. Isn't this an opportunity for the Tianhe forces? So he was pleasantly surprised, even ecstatic. Thank you, Senior Tian Rogwang. It's just that this is what I came to the Central Star region for. What should I do now? Jia Yan smiled bitterly. If he couldn't participate, there was nothing he could do. After all, he couldn't resist the dirty work of the genius domain officials. But this somewhat ruined Jia Yan's schedule. He originally thought about defeating the Duo Jian in the central area of the genius domain, and then joining a large force. Even after the big one, Jia Yan also made arrangements, but this first step was messed up. What to do next? He became a little confused. Cough. At this moment, Tian Rongguang finally had the opportunity to persuade himself. The senior and semi-star level executives behind him all knew that their boss might want to attract the words of a top genius for the first time in the history of the Tianhe force, and they all looked at him nervously and expectantly. This, Sir Jia Yan, with your talent, so what if you miss this opportunity? Why not just join our Tianhe influence temporarily, as Senior Xing just said, and wait until you are strong enough to join, and then fight those who exclude you. Defeat, and become famous. How about also announcing to the world that you are better than Na Duojian? This book comes from. For more information, please log in to the unique address of Moiwan Literature Network, mobile phone reading login. Welcome your visit. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 943. Moiwan Literature Network. For more information, please log in to the unique address of Moiwan Literature Network, mobile reading login. Welcome your visit /U003E /U003E /U003E. When Tian Rongguang said the words to invite Jia Yan, all the elders of the Tianhe forces were extremely nervous. You must know that the Tianhe force is indeed a small force in the Central Star region. Before, they would not have dared to invite a genius like Jia Yan. But it is different now. Tian Rongguang is a highly talented semi-star. He has just been promoted for less than 2 years. It is the time when the Tianhe forces are confident and want to greatly improve their strength. With a high-level genius at the semi-star level, Tianhe forces dared to invite top high-level talents like Jia Yan. Join the Tianhe forces. Jia Yan sank. Jia Yan, as you have seen from my Tianhe force, a high-level genius, and the official star level of the genius domain that I talked to you before are the ones who have stepped out of my Tianhe force. The future is very bright, and with your words, the Tianhe force may attack the central force in the future and the medium and large force levels, and your treatment will not be low. How about it? Tian Rongguang continued to persuade Jia Yan. Jia Yan actually doesn't have many requirements for which force he joins. His pursuit of resources is also different from other starry sky warriors. Because he is an evolution, he will devour anything as long as it is energy material that can be accommodated. The Tianhe power is indeed good, but I have heard that the fighting and cruelty in the central star region are more intense than in the outer star zone. I don't want to stay in a precarious power. As you know, this kind of power is not good for development. Jia Yan considered his words for a while, then shook his head and said, "So this is what you're worried about? That's not necessary." After hearing Jia Yan's words, Tian Rongguang explained with a chuckle. Later, Jia Yan realized that his previous worries were unnecessary. And there is also some prejudice. It can be said that the most important center point of the genius domain is the central star area. The star levels coming out here account for 80% of the overall star levels in the genius domain. If the genius domain really allows this place to be chaotic, how can the genius domain become a holy land? The cruel fighting rumored by the outside world is because the battle between geniuses in the central star region can be carried out as long as there is systematic certification. If this kind of fighting happens more, there must be rumors of blood. In fact, in the genius domain, if you want to destroying another force is not that simple. Especially among the Tianhe forces, although there are no very talented people, there is a highly talented Tian Rongguang. The possibility of being attacked is even smaller, because the high genius is half a star, and the genius domain official will not let such a half-footstep existences that reach the stellar level are dead. I see. If that's the case, I'll join you. But I'll tell you in advance that I can leave at any time if I want. Jia Yan finally nodded under the watchful eyes of all the elders. Very good. The elders of the Tianhe forces, as well as that De Rongguang, put down their reserve at this moment and started shouting one by one. Jia Yan just looked at the scene indifferently. After all, he had experienced similar scenes in his past. This scene will be the last one. When we reach the central star area, the next step is to achieve star achievement. Jia Yan looked across the group of semi-star seniors from the Tianhe forces and seemed to be able to see very far away. Tian Rongguang and other big creatures were a little shocked when they faintly sensed Jia Yan's magnanimity at this moment. Even if Jia Yan is a top-notch genius, he is just a venerable person. How can he and how dare he ignore a group of semi-stellar seniors? But Jia Yan just showed such an expression. If the seniors here knew that I was promoted to a star without even wanting to advance to the sub-level or semi-star level, would they think I was crazy? Under the personal leadership of Tian Rongguang, Jia Yan made the selection of cultivation resources and residence. The demeanor he showed this time was different from the forces he had experienced before. He showed indifference and calmness. He was not excited about being assigned a good residence, nor was he excited about receiving excellent resources. In the current Jia Yan's view, some external objects are no longer so important. As an evolution, he even feels that if he wants to advance to the star level next, that is, if he truly becomes a starry sky giant, it will be more important than external objects. What's more important is his heart. If he doesn't care about his heart, his promotion will only lead to life and death. That's why he chose the Tianhe force. Although he also understood that it might be better if he joined a larger force in the Central Star region, but for him, it was not necessary. Jia Yan, I know you are nostalgic. Let's do this. I remember that a mermaid disciple you came to the Central Star region with has joined our Tianhe force. I will let her be your servant and you will do the same. Convenient, how about it? Under the leadership of Tian Rongguang, after visiting a residence that was almost the size of an entire star, Tian Rongguang said this to Jia Yan. Then Jia Yan was a little surprised when he saw a fish-tailed, human-like monster outside his residence, flying into the house unwillingly. It's that mermaid Xiao. Whatever, Jia Yan had a headache, and Xiao didn't have much respect for him. Unexpectedly, the Tianhe forces did not know what method they used. Just when Jia Yan met Tian Rongguang and others, Xiao's attitude changed drastically. Sir, I am your servant Xiao, please hire me. Seeing that Jia Yanshan was a little unhappy, Xiao hurriedly asked Jia Yan softly as if to be alone. Xiao's face felt a little hot when she lowered her head to the existence she once looked down upon and still looked like this. But she didn't want to give up the opportunity to follow Jia Yan at all, because just now she quickly understood the current situation, and even more understood that in the Central Star Sector, Jia Yan was just like the one in the 132 Star Sector. He was a person of extremely high status. High presence. Her previous unfriendly attitude towards Jia Yan reached the ears of the bitch who guided her before. In the disbelief of the other party, Xiao was almost scolded to death, especially when there were several other people who had the same attitude. The temporary servants who accepted the guidance were all shocked and thought that Xiao was crazy and dared to treat such a high-level genius. But now Xiao understands that if she can't make Jia Yan accept her and returns to the director, she is destined to be ostracized and bullied. So even if it's embarrassing, she still has to get Jia Yan to agree to her being Jia Yan's exclusive slave. Forget it, just you, I usually have nothing to do anyway. Jia Yan nodded helplessly. There is no enmity in the first place, as long as the other party changes his attitude towards you, then forget it. After all, we were traveling together in a star teleportation vehicle from hundreds of light years away. Thank you, Master Jia Yan, Xiao almost cried, and she quickly threw herself down respectfully to express her submission. Okay, Jia Yan, tell me if you have anything to say. I'm still busy, so I'll leave first. Tian Rongguang saw that Jia Yan had made arrangements here, and he left directly as he was already busy with work. Sir, do I need to do anything? If nothing happens, I will continue to receive guidance from the servant. Xiao was a little embarrassed and asked Jia Yan. Seeing that this genius of the same level who was originally cold now became his servant and was still submissive, Jia Yan felt a little emotional. He did not retaliate too much and nodded to let him leave. Xiao scanned the star station for a while and then left. Jia Yan knelt down by himself and slowly began to practice in the huge cosmic energy of the central star area. He is summarizing his experience of improvement and fighting. You must know that many of the geniuses he experienced before have not been fully absorbed until now. For Jia Yan, these are precious assets. Without the outside world knowing anything about it, this top genius appeared in this Tianhe force. No one knows that this genius has helped the genius domain to kill an opponent before in the heated battle between the Star School and the Star School in the Central Star region. Jia Yan's name has not yet spread to the Central Sector. Even if it does, most geniuses in the Central Sector will definitely not accept it because there are too many similar urban legends. If no official star level comes forward to clarify, no one will. I don't believe that a being in the Edge Star region can beat a stellar academic genius. As for the official website of Genius Domain, please, it is impossible to clarify Jia Yan's story, so that story is destined to be just a legend. But the genius Jia Yan was unwilling to give up, and the Genius Domain versus the stellar academic domain genius began. In the Genius Domain, The person in charge is Longta, who is mainly provoked by the opponent. The person in charge of the Stellar Academy is the goat monster West Bandit, but he is not very good in front of the geniuses in the genius domain. Others don't know the reason. Only Longta and other officials in the genius domain know that the reason for the Western banditry was because a senior-level capable general was killed by Jia Yan when he was in the 132nd sector. Not to mention anything else, this was the death of a genius. He would be able to bear the pain of returning to the Star Academy. Then Jia Yan didn't come. It seems that the genius domain officials still have too many gaps in the department as before. Of course, our stellar academic domain is also the same, there are too many delays. The genius domain versus the stellar domain genius started, and the entire area for millions of miles was a fighting arena, but around this place, the Western bandit looked at the players beside the long tower and showed a sneer. This was how he was in the genius domain back then. There were too many gaps among the staff. He understood that Jia Yan had been eliminated by other participants, and Duo Jian, Jia Yan's original opponent not far from him, a member of the so-called Manatee clan, was also aware of this situation. Humph, it seems that my opponent will not be Jia Yan. He is lucky to have escaped with his life. When Duo Jian saw that his opponent was no longer Jia Yan, it didn't matter, because he had perfected his master's special skills. Even if he faced Jia Yan, he would have the confidence to kill him with one blow. Now that it was someone else, he just felt that Jia Yan was lucky. The players on both sides are extremely terrifying geniuses in their respective star regions, and in the central star region of this genius realm, the collision of these geniuses erupted like sparks hitting the earth. For more information, please log in to the unique address of Moiwan Literature Network, mobile phone reading login. Welcome your visit.